Hey guys, so how are we going to make sense of the Kim Soo-hyun press conference? The King of Tears took to the stage essentially at a press conference where he allowed no questions at the end, and within minutes he was bawling and speaking every word like this. I don't know if that was a strategy for him to not be able to be caught in some sort of soundbite and make it difficult for any of the broadcast journalists to use his words against him and just focus on him crying. That would be the media play game. The other situation could be he was really hurt, really feeling wronged, really feeling trapped and cornered and essentially canceled for something he did not do and did not deserve to be accused of. But did I buy it? Did I really buy it? Was my shopping cart full or did it say 0? So on this channel, I don't like to keep you in suspense. I tell you the conclusion first, and then we work through it, and you follow along and decide to have your own feelings about what's going on. I essentially did not buy his explanation, and cross-referencing his evidence that he presented at the press conference, I think made him look even guiltier. But of course we have to first talk about the tears. Queen of Tears went to King of Tears. Honey, actually, I think he is the Queen of Tears, okay? But the tears, I am shocked. From Korea's highest paid actor failing acting class. Not the beginning acting class 101, but when you're at least by 201, maybe 301 if you're slow memorizing your lines. Most people make a mistake when they're trying to act drunk and crying. And then also, I think the easiest way to understand is kind of like throwing up. When you are trying to act drunk, and you're trying to say I'm drunk. I've got to convince the audience I'm drunk. You don't look drunk. The way you act it is that you try to do what most people do when they're drunk. I'm not drunk. I'm not drunk. So if you are trying to steady yourself and you're moving, that looks more real than somebody going oh my God, I'm drunk, and moving around if they are drunk. Same thing with tears. The more that looks like he was just trying to make sure he pumped out the tears like he was on the toilet for hours, having, the more fake it looks. When you are crying in the real world, and then especially in acting, he should have known this. You try not to cry, then it looks more realistic. Because that's essentially when you are really sad, you're trying to hold back the tears. That's what makes it very genuine. And if it comes out, it's just, you couldn't help it. But there has to be almost like an explosion of you didn't want to cry and it's coming out. Same thing with if you're just trying to say, oh, I'm going to throw up on stage. No, it's more about you're trying not to throw up, and then that looks more real, because with throwing up, crying, and acting drunk, the reality of it is you try to not play it obvious. His was so obvious. So we're gonna go through his press conference, which took about 40 minutes, but actually the text that he was reading could have taken a lot less time. He was speaking like this. But let's clear up some questions that I've noticed some of you have had in the comment section about this whole situation. First of all, the age issue. A lot of people are asking, like, is it Korean age or international age? For the laws in South Korea, they go by the international age. They don't go by the Korean age. Now, you know, I want to purposefully, and also just as who I am, want to go back and forth. I really wanted to be swayed by Kim Soo-hyun in this press conference because this is the first time we've heard from him directly. This is the first time he's been able to command enough attention and space to present his side of the story. So we'll go into his side, but with the family side, you know, I think it's a very complex issue. I understand how people are thinking that, oh, they're just out to get money, and why are they bringing this up now? Number one, why are they bringing this up now? This is not just in Korean culture, but you can kind of consider that this has a strong force in Korean culture that if you're outgunned, essentially why bring it out now is that when Kim Se-ron was living and under the pressure, Kim Soo-hyun, so powerful, can ruin the rest of her life, ruin the rest of her career. It's not worth it to poke the bear. When you feel now that she's gone and your daughter has been taken from you, poke all sorts of bears. But I do believe that there is some money element to this. And I don't think that the family per se, I haven't seen, is trying to aggressively get a payout. I think what they're actually trying to do is really draw the line and make it official from Kim Soo-hyun's side that they're not going to go after them for the $700,000. And so I think that they are trying to reduce their liabilities. That comes from what I was able to pick up in conversations that they had that were concerned about, like, oh, like they're trying to figure out like how much money that Kim Se-ron owed, and I think they're trying to figure out like, okay, like where is our liability, because they don't want to be saddled with this kind of burden. If they are telling the truth, if they have been so wronged, if their daughter had been taken away from them, if it was because of Kim Soo-hyun, that of course can be debatable. And here is where I think the bigger debate is actually happening. If there is a gift from this tragedy to improve society and at least have it reflect upon themselves before they make an improvement or a collective decision, essentially to change the law of age of consent, we're already seeing that. And I think in some ways, this scandal with Kim Soo-hyun and Kim Se-ron is Korea's way of having this public debate about age of consent, a very uncomfortable topic, without having the debate directly. And this is becoming clearer to me when, first of all, after the press conference, there was a petition for an anti-Kim Soo-hyun law to raise the age of consent to essentially 19. 19 is the age of adulthood in Korea, international age, and to raise the age of consent to 19 instead of it being 16 as it is right now and 13 as it was when Kim Se-ron and Kim Soo-hyun allegedly started dating. Because the biggest cues of this, and I agree, because a lot of you guys have been saying, what is so wrong about him breaking up with her? What is so wrong about his company going after her to collect a debt? No matter how harsh it could have been. In the worst case scenario, oh, it was ruthless and harsh. In the best case scenario, it really was just an accounting thing, and they had properly communicated that she didn't need to pay off the debt. Because those two things, even in Korea, they wouldn't be ascribed as reasons that could be culpable on Kim Soo-hyun's side of leading to the mental anguish that would lead Kim Se-ron to make her final choice in this world. In other words, if it were an adult, if they was grown adults especially like, let's say, even clearer, like hands down, if they're both over 30 and the same exact situation happened, even if the girl in that situation decided to go to a different dimension and also blame her partner for the actions, a lot of people would not think that, oh, well, yeah, she could have felt bad about that, but you can't really blame Kim Soo-hyun. I think a lot of people would agree. However, because of this issue of age, of when the relationship started, I think this is really becoming a debate over age of consent. And otherwise, most people would be like, they just broke up. No matter how harsh it could have been, they broke up. That's not his fault in terms of her decision. And then collecting the debt, that sucks. That's horrible. However, it's not really his fault in the final end. Legally, I don't think it's can be construed as his fault, even if they were dating from the point that Kim Soo-hyun's family and Kim Soo-hyun's own words claim that she was so young. However, because it's a debate and because people aren't totally on Kim Soo-hyun's side, I think it has opened and has become very clear that this is a debate about the age of consent and why it should or should not be raised to the level of adulthood, because we are recognizing the catastrophic effects of that kind of relationship with an imbalanced power dynamic, of how that can create a trauma that is not really, you can't really recover from. It's one of these traumas that you try to make laws to protect people from, because no matter how much therapy and how much kumbaya and how many prayers and how many just getting over it, finding something new, it just is there for life and can lead to decisions and actions that aren't good for that person, definitely, and then also society as a whole. But of course, this day was about Kim Soo-hyun and his press conference and him telling his side of the story at the Stanford Hotel, which is not like a fancy hotel or anything in Seoul. He said, "Hello, this is Kim Soo-hyun. First, I apologize." He's apologizing for making a mess. Even if you are the victim, especially in Korea, if you're speaking out about it or, you're making an issue out of it, you still have to apologize, even if you think that you're the victim, because you're creating an uncomfortable situation for other people and bursting their bubble. He went on to say, "It seems that so many people are suffering because of me, and it breaks my heart that the deceased cannot rest in peace." That's like literally the extent of his apology to Kim Soo-hyun. Sorry, you're having insomnia up in heaven because of all this drama that's going on. Now he goes into justifying why he essentially lied and delayed in telling the truth, but trying to make it relatable, which I don't think worked. "I consider myself a coward. I always seemed preoccupied with protecting what I had. I couldn't even trust the kindness shown to me, and I was always afraid of losing something, of being harmed, so I was busy running away and denying things. That's why it took me so long to stand here. I've been thinking, what if I had just told everything from the beginning? If I had, wouldn't the fans who loved me, the company staff who worked tirelessly to make even this press conference happen, wouldn't they have all suffered so much less?" First of all, that just reads as like, I run from the truth, I'm a coward, and that's not a good look for somebody who's supposed to be essentially an idol or somebody who is supposed to be a role model, especially in the roles he takes. And then saying that like, oh, other people would have suffered less. No, he's saying like how I would have suffered less. This looks like he is focusing on himself, and he's trying to tap into this common, I think, fear-based protective action that most people actually do in Korea, revert to, relatable. but it's something that they don't want to admit. It's not something that you kind of brag saying like, oh yes, I live with the fear-based mindset and I would rather protect myself at the cost of others. Most people probably do it, but they don't speak of it as an admirable quality. And while they may sort of keep it real and with their coworkers or people around them all say like, oh yeah, well, like, yeah, I just kind of chickened out, or, I was just trying to protect what I had. That might work with them and their coworkers, but once they hear their CEO say that, oh, I'm a coward, I'm just trying to protect what I had, they're all going to be looking for other jobs. You don't want to hear that from the people above you that you hold on a pedestal, and especially Kim Soo-hyun, he's trying to, go down and keep it real. It doesn't work here because he's on a pedestal and he's supposed to be an example of when you're not supposed to be running around with a fear-based attitude, sacrificing other people to protect what's yours. That is not admirable. Every time my private life with the deceased was exposed, I kept thinking, let's just tell everything tomorrow. Procrastination again. Let's personally speak up and end this hellish situation. But every time I hesitated, shows weakness. What impact would my decision have on those around me? What if the decision makes everything go wrong for myself and everybody else? Again, these are things that normal people, and in a way, he is a normal person too. He is not like a Superman. However, at the same time, it's less of an excuse in Korean society and probably a lot of other societies, just like, you're not supposed to be that weak in character because, we are holding you up on a pedestal in society and you are supposed to be leading us to something greater and we've given you the rewards for that. Sort of like a Ferrari that demands like a huge amount of money to buy. It's just suddenly complaining like it was a Ford, with among other Fords and being like, oh, well, yeah, having problems with that horsepower in 0 to 60. No, not for that money. It was the same when the deceased posted a photo of us together during the airing of Queen of Tears. 5 years ago and 4 years before Queen of Tears aired, the deceased and I dated for about a year. He's doubling down on this. But at that time, I denied the dating rumors, admitting that he lied. I think it's natural to criticize me for that choice, trying to show humility. I understand if you can't believe what I'm saying now about what happened between the deceased and me, but since this is the only chance I have to speak like this here, I would be so grateful if you would just listen to my story once. So he's essentially saying, like, he started the lies. When you really think about it, Kim Sae-ron's family, have they to this point ever been really caught in a lie? Perhaps there are things that still need to be verified, but I have not seen any situation where they've been caught in a lie. The only person who's been caught in a lie repeatedly has been Kim Soo-hyun, and he's saying in this press conference, I'm sorry that I lied in the past, but here, this moment, try to hear my story and believe me. Again, this is all about him. The crying doesn't seem to match. Who is he crying about? What is he crying about? It's supposed to be the injustice of this situation, but there's no injustice yet that he's talking about. I became an actor and received an overwhelming amount of love. Originally, I wasn't someone who had much, but I became someone with so much to protect. Even when Queen of Tears was airing, there were so many things I had to protect as the lead actor. At that time, if I admitted to a relationship with someone I dated years ago, what would happen? What would happen to the actors I was working with, all the staff who were up all night on set, the production company that was putting everything on the line for this project, and our company's staff? In some ways, I think Korean people would understand this type of situation, and even international fans. You guys have been saying that you understand how like everybody has to keep these dating things a secret because it impacts the business of it all. And yeah, there has to be so much to protect. On the other hand, that's only if everything seems kumbaya and the person ain't doing anything wrong. When you start saying you have so much to protect and the scale becomes so big, Korean people also then reserve this part in their brain, the self-protective measure, that this person, if they have way too much to protect, is willing to do a lot of bad things to protect it, and therefore be on guard. Whenever the choices of human Kim Soo-hyun and star Kim Soo-hyun diverged, I think I always made the choice of star Kim Soo-hyun. He's going into Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. On some level, Korean people and other people around the world would understand, yes, you have your persona that you have for your work as a celebrity and your real self. However, this is something that he probably shouldn't have gone into, because then now this makes him look like a little bit of a loop-de-loopy, that he would choose Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde, I think, was the evil face of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He goes on to say, so I was actually afraid every day. I was afraid of what would happen if everything I chose to protect because I was star Kim Soo-hyun came back to me as poison. Yeah, retribution. Did you do a lot of bad things as Kim Soo-hyun? I think people understand this. If you're sacrificing your actual self to, sacrifice and do things on behalf of other people, the way that he's trying to describe what he did on behalf of other people for star Kim Soo-hyun. But now this is getting into a situation where it looks like he's willing to lie, cheat, and steal for the star Kim Soo-hyun, and then he was worried about that coming back to haunt you. Well, yeah, it is. I was afraid of everything, but even if I could go back to when Queen of Tears was airing, I would make that choice again. So he's just saying, like, I would do exactly the same thing. I'm going to protect star Kim Soo-hyun, and this is like a hallmark of narcissism. This false self versus your real self, and you're only going to protect the false self at all costs. And it reminded me of, remember that Legally Blonde, where the fitness instructor who turned out to be somewhat of a fraud because she got liposuction, and she said that she would never ever admit to it because she had her reputation to uphold, and she would lie to defend that reputation. And for her, it was like a virtue that she was going to lie to protect her reputation.
I've made my fortune on the ability to perfect women's bodies with Brooke's butt buster workout. On the day of Hayworth's murder, I was getting liposuction. Huh? Liposuction! Oh, God! No. I know, I'm a fraud! It's not like normal women can have this ass. If my fans knew that I bought it, I would lose everything.
I think this is the situation here, where it's just like, I am so committed to this star image of Kim Soo-hyun and protecting it at all costs for myself and for everybody else who has to make a living off of it, that they, like, don't worry, I'm going to lie, steal, and cheat for that reputation to be upheld. No matter how much I think about it, I don't think I can make that decision as I please just to make myself comfortable. I thought that was the responsibility that someone who chose the life of Kim Soo-hyun has to bear. So he's like, yeah, now, like, referring to himself in the third person. I will accept any criticism if you call that choice cowardly or selfish, and I apologize to everyone who has cared for me. So he's doubling down on this concept of he must protect the business of Kim Soo-hyun, and hoping that people would understand that this is the type of business, this is how the sausage is made in the idol or star celebrity business, that you have to make these choices. And he would do it again, and it's not cowardly, but if you're going to call me cowardly or selfish, I have to accept that. But this is, he's doubling down as if that transfers to the decision on how he treated Kim Sae-ron and lied about the relationship. But a lot of people, I don't think, would sympathize with his multi-$100 million status and then doing this. That there's a certain line I think Korean people and people around the world kind of draw like, yeah, that makes sense if you're kind of like in a desperate situation. And maybe people don't realize, once you get to his scale of hundreds of millions, it's also tough. But you also have with that a lot of power that you have gained along the way, where you don't have to, there's a difference in like In Living Color J-Lo when she's just trying to, scrappily, get her way up, and then like movie star J-Lo, although she self-imploded too, but it's a different power dynamic. Even at this moment, I have a lot of worries and I'm anxious. What kind of consequences will my words have this time? Which is why he was speaking so slowly. But because I'm that kind of person, I thought I had to speak up. In the end, there were also people who gave me this advice. Let's resolve this smoothly. To manage the risk, you should at least first show that you're accepting things to a certain extent. Then you'll fade from people's interest and you can prepare for a comeback later. If I had listened to those words, maybe my private life with the deceased would not have been exposed to this extent. So essentially saying like, oh, my remorse is not telling the truth sooner. So in some ways you can kind of think like, well, he has nothing to feel sorry about because he didn't do anything wrong. That's the track he's going. But if you do believe he did something wrong, this really feels like a narcissist, that he cannot empathize with, yeah, you should have done it because she was really hurting. She really wanted to reach out to you, and you really ignored her and attacked her. Because again, he's the one that was lying first. She did not lie, actually. When she uploaded those images, desperate for a response, and then held back, she protected his reputation at the cost of her own. Another type of girl or person would have maybe perhaps said, okay, well, I'll take it down, protect your reputation, but then saw like, oh, well, I'm being hung out to dry for this, and people call me crazy, like a delulu, that I am pretending that I was in a relationship with Kim Soo-hyun. Oh no, I'm gonna post the receipts. But she didn't do that even then. She was willing to suffer the consequences and be labeled as a crazy delulu in order to keep protecting Kim Soo-hyun. So who's the one that seems to have more credibility in that situation? I wouldn't have had to receive threats every day about what photos they would upload tomorrow, what they would expose, and I wouldn't have been humiliated by having photos of my private life leaked. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't accept being threatened and forced to admit lies that were the truth. So if you do believe him, that does suck. To basically be like under the threat of, we're gonna expose something else. And Mr. Kato Sero, he's he's really smarmy with like, well, we got everything and we're gonna drip it out unless we could drip out something more, something worse. We got it all. Unless you apologize. And then apologize for what? If he did not do this, why is he gonna apologize for something he did not do? That's his position. On the other hand, it just seems, if he did do all of this, that just seems so like selfish, self-involved, like, oh my God, I can't believe like you're doing this to me, like you're trying to expose this every day. Meanwhile, the family is trying to say like, okay, we don't want to expose the worst first. We will just expose a little bit so you get the hint, and then you come to the kumbaya table and we don't have to make it messy. All right, fine. We'll just make it a little bit more spicy, like that, mild, medium, hot. But a lot of people are thinking like, ooh, that's a little sus to drip it out. They should have just gone for the extra hot sauce habanero from the beginning. But you can kind of see that, if you're looking at the best intentions from both sides, that was the best intention from the family side, because they didn't want, to burn it on the way out when you didn't have to. I'll talk about the part you're most curious about. I did not date the deceased when she was a minor, and it is also not true that the deceased made a tragic choice because of me turning away or because my agency pressured her about the debt. So again, you guys, this is the main point. This is the main fight. How much of an effect did Kim Soo-hyun have on Kim Se-ron making her final choice because of dating as a minor? He said that's not true. Turning away, breaking up, that's not true. Third, pressuring her about the debt, that's not true. So he's essentially saying like, I had nothing to do with her final choice. Aside from the fact that we were both actors, we were both just ordinary lovers like everyone else. We met with good feelings for each other, and as time passed, we broke up. After that, we rarely contacted each other. Like most couples, we were cautious to contact each other separately after breaking up. We were both actors who were known to many people, and when she was in the same agency as me, I knew to some extent how she was doing, so it was even more so. Because of the way that other information has come to our light about Kim Soo-hyun's predilection for the younger females and then wanting to marry a 21-year-old when he's a 41-year-old, kind of doing a little bit of the DiCaprio model. It felt a little horrible to read when he said, well, we met with good feelings for each other, and as time passed, we broke up. Like as if as time passed, you changed the tires on your car. That felt a little bit odd to me. It didn't feel good to me. That's why I could not easily contact her even when she had a drunk driving accident. I heard on the YouTube channel representing the deceased family that the CEO of a final agency said that she was having a hard time because of me at the time of the drunk driving incident, but I know that she was dating someone else at the time. That doesn't prove anything. She could be dating somebody trying to forget about you, but she could legitimately still be drinking and trying to get over you, like everyone is probably saying, just meet somebody else, and she's probably trying that, but then she could legitimately be drinking because she can't get over you. In that situation, I was cautious about contacting her. We were already living our own lives, and I didn't know what to say. My words may sound like excuses. I also just want to stay quiet no matter what the world said. I always receive a lot of misunderstandings as much as I receive excessive love. Things that are not true also circulate as if they are true. I thought that was also something I had to bear. But the deceased family is claiming that I drove the deceased to her death because I was her ex-boyfriend. They are forcing me to confess to things I didn't do. You manipulated the deceased and she was a minor. You pressured the deceased with money and killed her, so you are a murderer. So he's saying like, look, stop making these accusations and turning me into some monster because I just dated her for a little bit, broke up with her, and then we paid for some of the damages that happened because of the DUI, and we had to do our accounting thing. Like, you guys are blowing it out of proportion from his perspective. Now, he brought up some receipts about essentially exactly the whole debt issue, and he said, first, please listen to this audio. After the family exposed my relationship to the deceased, the YouTube channel that conveys the family's position, Sero, released the testimony of the CEO of the deceased finals agency. So Kim Se-ron had gone to this agency called Run Entertainment, and this is the CEO's voice recording. In a newly recorded phone call after the exposure, this person said that our agency pressured the deceased about her debts by sending a second certificate of contents regarding the debt relationship with the deceased. But in a call with our agency CEO a year ago, she said something completely different. Please listen to it once. So he's essentially saying that this CEO is aligning with Kim Se-ron, went on to Sero and said that it was my fault. However, I got the receipts that it had been cleared up with this CEO that we're not pressuring her for the money. So this is what the CEO and a representative at the gold medalist agency were talking about with the debt situation, recorded phone call. Now I think every phone call in Korea must be recorded by everybody because they got the receipts for everything. So in this recording, the gold medalist CEO is telling Kim Soo-hyun's agency CEO that we're going to send over a notarized document and another one, and we're going to send it to you, but we're going to let you know, give you a heads up by text so you don't get startled. And it's just that we have these procedures that we have to do because if I don't send it, I'm going to be the one that's in trouble. So because there was no response to the first letter demanding debt repayment immediately, we're going to send this one again, but you don't need to be too alarmed. Kim Soo-hyun's agency CEO said, okay, fine, sure. And then the gold medalist CEO said that, okay, well, you can send us a letter back saying like, we're going to do this in a certain time frame so that we don't have to escalate this up legally, because otherwise, we're going to be accused of embezzlement if we just let this money go. It looks like we're doing like a sweetheart deal. So you have to suggest this. I can't suggest it for you. And I can't verbally say, oh, please repay it slowly, because I would be the one in trouble. It's a company matter. So can you please explain this to Kim Soo-hyun? And then the Run Entertainment CEO said yes. Now, this is a little bit odd, because if you're going to get in trouble for verbally saying like you can't say that please repay it slowly, why are you recording this phone call? Shouldn't this be one of the phone calls you don't record? This is a little bit suspicious. And so it could be totally AI generated, or it could be the truth. But had the two talked? Yes, according to the Run Entertainment CEO. And so there was that YouTube video that Kim Soo-hyun was referring to, saying like, oh, that CEO was totally lying about this situation. And I was like, oh my God, that's one conversation. Like, I don't want to go into the weeds, but I am glad I did, because I needed to cross-reference the claims of Kim Soo-hyun with the actual recording that was presented between the Run Entertainment CEO and the auntie and mom of Kim Seo-hyun. And this was on March 21st. And there was a lot of information that was revealed that we really wanted to know about. And hearing the interaction, not with the Sero man who's probably going to try to pump them in a certain way, this was a conversation between the family and the CEO, and the family really trying to get details about what was going on with Kim Soo-hyun. The family has been presented as like, oh, well, they didn't care, they didn't know what the heck was going on. But a lot of times they were saying like, Kim Soo-hyun was an adult at this point, and she would choose what information to share with her family, and the family had to respect her boundaries and her privacies in the way that she was doing business. And so it didn't come across to me as disinterested. It was kind of like, it came across to me as a family who was trying to now get the facts because they are forced to. Because if you look at it from a different perspective, at the time, while Kim Soo-hyun was working with this agency, and then this auntie is always saying like, well, okay, what did you talk to this? Like, keep me informed about everything. It would be like, some of it is not your business. And I think the auntie and the mother was like, okay, some of this is not our business. She's gonna do her own business, and we'll keep informed as much as we can. So there was a lot of gaps that they were filling.
네네.
라고 생각해서 저도 세론이랑 일할 결심을 했던 거고.
아, 그러셨구나.
First, it was about Mr. Kwak, the Kwak manager, the one that looks super sus now, because the aunt thought he was sus, and the Run Entertainment CEO in this phone call, they're both saying, we think he's sus. We think he's a mole. We think he's actually on the payroll or some sort of connection where his loyalty is with gold medalist or Kim Soo-hyun, not Kim Seo-hyun, who he was managing, and not with Run Entertainment, which, he should be accountable to Run Entertainment and Kim Soo-hyun. So the CEO said, like, I haven't been able to get in touch with a Kwak manager, and I think he is aligned with gold medalist. She called him a crazy, mofo. And then she said, like, there's an article saying that he never gave the recording to Jin-ho. And yes, it is true that I paid her hospital bills. And then the aunt was like, oh yeah, is it true that like in total, like you spent like 50 to 60 grand like on her, situation? And the CEO was like, yeah, about 65, but I had no intentions of trying to get it back. So the aunt, I think, was trying to also be like, oh my gosh, like, do we owe her money too? And so, the CEO was just like, don't worry about it. Now, the aunt said that Kwak manager seemed to gatekeep information between Sae-ron and her mom. And this is when she said, like, we know she's an adult, but there's so much that the mom didn't know. Like, we know that she's an adult now. Like, she has to make her own decisions, do her own thing, not have mommy do, kind of be involved in everything. And the mother said that there was no interaction with the agency because of this Kwak character blocking, kind of isolating Kim Soo-hyun. And the CEO said, like, I didn't even know the mother's phone number. At first, I asked for the mother's number, but Soo-hyun didn't seem like she wanted me to contact her. And the CEO said, well, I know that in the end, the mom is essentially like the main manager. So if we get a good project, essentially like a project that's going to make a lot of money, then I will meet her, like essentially insist on meeting her to, sign the contract. We could meet then. And the aunt was being like, a little bit like Sherlock Holmes. She was saying like, when the first letter came from the agency, from the gold medalist agency demanding the money, did anybody even know that Sae-ron had signed with you, like the new agency Run Entertainment? And the CEO was like, no, actually, there was no media. And the aunt thinks that Kwak manager must have told gold medalist that now Sae-ron was with the new agency. Now, why is this? Like, the auntie is playing chess, okay? I was like, what is this? Well, essentially what the aunt is saying is that Kwak manager knows that, oh, now that Sae-ron is with a new agency, we can demand payment of this $700,000 immediately, because Sae-ron will probably go to her new agency and say like, okay, can you pay this on my behalf right now? And I'll pay you back later. That would be transferring, essentially like a bill collector selling the debt to somebody else. And that could have been, Kwak's job at that time. That's what the aunt is suspecting. But yes, Sae-ron went to the CEO. The CEO said, yes, she came to me and crying about the first letter, but didn't tell me about the second letter. And the family said, we didn't hear about the second letter either. According to the recording that Kim Soo-hyun just released, said that like, oh, well, our CEO told her about the second letter, a heads up about the second letter. The CEO knew about the second letter. So that's the only part where it seems like the CEO of the new agency, Run Entertainment, may have kind of slipped up, or if it's true, it may have made a mistake that she didn't inform about the second letter. But the way that she's making her account, it really even didn't matter. And also, it doesn't look like that was the case. The CEO said that, yeah, it could have been Kwak, or it could have just been other people whispering around town, because they were going around town as the new agency trying to get Kim Soo-hyun into new projects for a good comeback so that she can have her career again. And, while you're talking to other people, they might report back to Kim Soo-hyun's agency, be like, oh, do you know she has a new agency? So it's either Kwak or it's either somebody else. But in any event, the aunt thinks that, oh, they saw that like, okay, Kim Soo-hyun probably couldn't pay this debt immediately, but this new agency might be able to pay immediately. The CEO said that, yeah, I talked to them and I told them that we can't pay this right away, but we will pay like 10 to 20% of what she's making, and it could take 1 year or 2 years to get her back into the game and to have her be part of the whole entertainment system again and to be earning a paycheck. But she said that she didn't know about the second letter. The aunt said she didn't know about the second letter. And the aunt was like, why then, if gold medalists talked to you, Mrs. CEO, they ignored all the phone calls of Kim Soo-hyun. And apparently the CEO even knew some about that situation. She said that when she was talking to gold medalist, that the gold medalist people had taken Kim Soo-hyun's phone and saw the texts. And so according to the CEO of Run Entertainment, gold medalist definitely knew that Kim Soo-hyun sent that pleading, begging, heartfelt text to Kim Soo-hyun, and still, after seeing that, sent the second letter, thereby basically saying that Kim Soo-hyun didn't care. Kim Soo-hyun's agency didn't care. They just went and just like tried to annihilate Kim Soo-hyun. Okay, about the DUI, because a lot of people have just been like, that's the zero tolerance. She got behind the wheel. She was drunk. She shouldn't have done it. That's totally her fault. Well, according to the CEO, when she talked to Kim Soo-hyun, and I wish Kim Soo-hyun was a lot more vocal about this when she was alive, they said that the owner of the place that she was at asked her to move her car. It happens a lot in Korea, like there's not a lot of places to park. So a lot of times people are double parked or you got to move your car. And so she wasn't going to drive. She was just going to move her car. And apparently, some people have tinted, not just tinted windows. They have like a shade that you can pull down. And so the CEO said that when she talked to Seo-hyun about this situation, that Seo-hyun was trying to pull down the shade while moving the car out of the way, and immediately she rammed into that transformer. And so that's just more details, an account from the CEO. That's what the CEO claims, what Seo-hyun said about the situation. I don't know if that changes your opinions on, how she still did get behind the wheel. She shouldn't have. But on the other hand, it wasn't as if she was just gonna, get on the freeway and, just be like, woohoo. Because the CEO of the new entertainment company, as signing on Kim Soo-hyun, she wanted to also, she needed to check, because Kim Soo-hyun came in as a bit of a high-risk client, right? Like she has all these scandals around her, so she wanted to clarify, tell me the truth about the DUI, and then also tell me the truth about this horrible media campaign against you that you're faking working at a cafe. And she really wanted to see not just about the cafe situation, more of like, is this girl a liar? Is this a girl who tries to play up, being innocent or cosplaying for public sympathy? Or is she true and honest? And she said like, okay, explain what was going on with the picture. And Seo-hyun said that, well, I have definitely been working at a cafe, but that picture that's being circulated was when I was visiting a friend at her cafe, and I decided, hey, I'm just going to help you out for the day. So those pictures were from a cafe that she didn't officially work at, but she was helping her friend, so which basically means that in some ways that article was true, where the owner of that cafe was just like, no, Kim Soo-hyun never worked here, but her friend has worked here. So in that situation, you could be like, that's still a little bit of a convenient answer, even though, it looks like it was true, because the owner was still like, even though I'm on Kim Soo-hyun's side, I want her as a client. I'm not going to trust her 100%. I need to verify. So she went to a cafe that Kim Soo-hyun was working. She said, I went twice unannounced, once at 6 p.m., once at 9 p.m. to double check, this girl really do, work at a cafe, or is she just fronting? And she basically said, like, I was convinced because you can't fake manual labor. Like, you got to know what you're doing. Like, if she was faking it, then, you know, her espressos would be all over the place. But I guess she was packing that in. And she said that it looked like, wow, this is a girl who works hard, works honestly, and she does tell the truth. So after hearing the conversation that Kim Soo-hyun said was like totally false and fabricated and I'm proving it, it actually makes it seem as if I have more trust in this Run Entertainment CEO. And it corroborates actually her story because she said, I did speak to the gold medalist people. And so to me, it doesn't seem like it was a situation that made Kim Soo-hyun be like, see, they're lying about me. It almost feels like he's manipulating the situation about Kim Se-ron's side. So let's go back to his press conference. I learned about this through this controversy, but this is the truth about the second certificate of contents. But I don't know why the CEO of the deceased final agency is lying, saying that something completely different from the call a year ago. I will admit to anything I did wrong. I think it's a must to take responsibility for anything I have to take responsibility for, but I can't say that I did something I didn't do. The audio testimonies that the family is claiming were recorded newly after the incident was exposed. So he's saying like the family has no credibility, that audio has no credibility. Now he's moving on to the KakaoTalks. The same goes for the KakaoTalk content that the family initially released. There are too many incorrect facts in this KakaoTalk to say that the deceased wrote it. The photo that was said to be from 2016 was actually from 2019. Also, the deceased could not have been wrong about the age difference between us. In addition, she couldn't have been wrong about the name of the agency she was part of for 4 years and the contract period. And the deceased only worked as an actress at her company. She never did any casting or visual directing. So a lot of you have been asking also about the KakaoTalks are saying like, oh, it looks fake because that profile photo of Kim Soo-hyun is a recent photo, not an old photo. The screenshots that Karo Man has been presenting were essentially like reconstructed like PowerPoint versions of the KakaoTalk conversation. So it's not the original screenshots. They have the raw data. So it would essentially be like, do you want to see the KakaoTalks like, you know, without the graphics, without the easy to, you know, see pictures and bubbles, or do you want to just see lines like an Excel spreadsheet? So they put it back into that format, and they've said that it's, you know, put back into that format. But Kim Soo-hyun is going one step further, saying like all of this has been manipulated and that this is kind of fake. Through a recent press conference, the family also released content from KakaoTalk conversations that I allegedly exchanged with the deceased, and that YouTube channel is framing me as a pedophile and minor groomer by using the statements in the KakaoTalk conversations from 2016 as evidence. This is the big statement. This is the biggest statement of the press conference. He said, however, the person who was talking to the deceased in the KakaoTalk conversation from 2016 and the KakaoTalk conversation from 2018 are different people. So he's essentially saying like, this is not me in those KakaoTalk conversations, especially the ones that are like the groomer ones. How is he going to prove this? He says, to prove this fact, I submitted the KakaoTalk conversations from 2016 and 2018 that the family submitted and the conversations that I shared with my acquaintances this year to a verification agency that scientifically analyzes statements. As a result, the agency concluded that the people in 2016 and 2018 are not the same person, as you can see. So he's saying like, oh, I got the forensic evidence that this was a lie. This wasn't me. However, already, now this is really, I think, going to hurt Kim Soo-hyun the most because it makes him look the shadiest of the shady. The verification agency in question has very low credibility, and the actual test that he made it sound like it would be a forensics thing where you just have to look up the metadata. Not so whatsoever. The verification is based on speech patterns. So this agency is essentially a service designed for analysis of testimony. So a lot of the times in these essay situations, these cases, it's a he said testimony versus a she said testimony. And I guess sometimes you can ask a verification agency to give an expert opinion on, is this person lying in their testimony? Well, he went to that place that has had a history of advertising itself saying like, ooh, after this person that got accused of SA came to us, we were able to do a verification analysis that made the accuser look not credible, and the guy walked free. He did it for KakaoTalk conversations, but that is so subjective. He's basically saying the speech patterns are different, so these are different people. Maybe I would believe that if it was audio speech patterns and you have a vocal recording, like, is it the person's voice? But this is essentially like how you're texting. Everybody knows that like you kind of text different to different people. You text different in different, slang of the era. You text different based on what emoticon package you bought. Like how is the syntax, the conversation style of how you are Kakao talking going to be verifiable to basically say like that's not me? So he's essentially saying like, I went to this verification agency and they said that the way that this so-called Kim Soo-hyun in 2016 was talking on KakaoTalk, it doesn't sound like the way that I Kakao talk now in 2025. You pull up your KakaoTalk from 10 years ago and see if like your patterns are different. Definitely all the emoticons are different because some of those, things expire. So that was completely subjective, but he's presenting this as like an objective scientific analysis that proves that those text messages weren't his, but now it looks like they definitely are. Moving on. The most painful thing since the family's exposure began was this. When my agency and I release our stance on the family's evidence, a newly recorded testimony is suddenly released. Photos and videos that suddenly change the timing of the incident and edited KakaoTalk messages or images that are not original are presented as evidence. False testimonies and false evidence are continuing under the pretext that I dated the deceased. So, if he is telling the truth, that sucks. That's horrible. Essentially, he is accusing the family and Mr. Karosero man of making stuff up. Literally making up false accusations and supporting those false accusations with false evidence. On the other hand, what evidence has been proven as false till now from the family side? I will accept any criticism for the choices I made, but that doesn't mean that everything that is not true becomes true. Just as I have taken verification procedures for KakaoTalk, I will take procedures to thoroughly verify everything that the family is presenting as evidence through investigative agencies. If the evidence that the family has is really true, I request that they submit all the data to the investigative agency and be verified through legal procedures. So you're saying like, okay, let's test all the receipts. Let's test all the evidence, which I think is good for the family to do as well. As long as you can trust this agency, like where are you sending this to? Even at this moment, I have people who are only looking at me and who I have to take responsibility for. I am seeing those people suffering and collapsing every day. I'm afraid of what will be exposed and distorted again today to frame me as a murderer. I don't know what kind of fake evidence and fake testimonies will defame me and harass the people around me after this press conference is over. But if I say that lies are truth because I can't overcome the coercion, so he's saying like, I'm not going to bow down to being coerced into admitting something that I didn't do. I will betray not only Kim Soo-hyun as a human being, but also everyone who has given trust and love to Kim Soo-hyun, the star. I will give them pain that will last a lifetime. I think that he understands what the business and reality of celebrity is on the effect of the people who love him. Even if I am Kim Soo-hyun, who lives wearing a mask as a celebrity, I can't do that. What I did, I did. I can take all the criticism for that, but I will not do what I did not do. For all the people who still believe in me, I want to reveal that much. I will not ask you to believe me. I will definitely prove it. So he doubled down on this. He's saying like, I am innocent. I am innocent. I will prove it to the very end. He didn't take any questions, even though there was one, sassy reporter who yelled out like, so when did you actually meet Kim Soo-hyun? And he didn't answer that.
꼭 증명하도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
And then the lawyer took over and said like, look, y'all, we're suing the bereaved family member. So they're suing Kim Soo-hyun's family, including the auntie and Mr. Garo's Sero. So in total, it was about like a $12 million lawsuit that they are suing for. And that is how they wrapped up the press conference. A lot of people weren't really impressed. A lot of people were still on the sidelines. A lot of people are looking at Kim Soo-hyun with the side eye and not like kind of being like, oh, well, I didn't realize that, maybe we are, canceling him. It didn't have the effect that Kim Soo-hyun, I think, was hoping for. It made him look, in my mind, a lot shadier, and a lot of people really didn't like how he didn't take questions from the reporters because it was a press conference. So, of course, we got to hear what Mr. Sero said because he is now at the core of this situation, being sued like this, and also the source of a lot of this information and being the de facto spokesperson for the family making all the accusations against Kim Soo-hyun. Mr. Sero, of course, he has his problems, and of course I don't agree with everything he says, but he is funny sometimes. And so he's just like, look, it was a show of tears. He came in full hair and makeup. Did you go to a salon in Cheongnam-dong, which is like the Beverly Hills of Korea? Oh, he sprayed that mop of hair. Not one strand fell out of place even as he bowed multiple times. Lip gloss to boot. Now, Mr. Sero, man, that is kind of funny, but how y'all know about every single aspect of this hair and makeup? So, it takes one to know one. He worked in broadcast journalism, so he knows when there's lip gloss. He knows when there's hairspray. I don't know if he's the one to be criticizing that because I'm sure he's got a little tube of lip gloss somewhere in a drawer that he puts on every now and then. And he said that, I'm not afraid of your lawsuit totaling, 120억. Our portion apparently for him was about 50억, so about $5 million. And he's like, I don't know about your multiple nicknames. Now he's thrown out some threats, now that he's saying like, I'm not afraid of your lawsuit threat. How about you be afraid of my threat? And he's saying like, you got multiple nicknames, and why are you 불금? Not 불금. 불금 means like, oh, crazy hot Friday, but 불금. And I don't know what that means. And he's pretending like, oh, I don't know what that means. What could that mean? But then he's saying like, then he said, you know how much I know, right? So he's threatening like, oh, he knows what this is a secret code for and that he might expose this soon. Mr. Sero said that, oh gosh, Kim Soo-hyun, the star, is referring to himself in the third person. And why is he so desperate? Because of Disney. The Disney Plus streaming show might have a potential penalty fee of 1,800억, which I think is like about $180 million. So he is fighting for his life. And Mr. Sero said like, look, Kim Soo-hyun, you're hoping that we're going to drag this lawsuit out for maybe about 3 years. People will forget. He has time. And then Mr. Sero was like, I have time too. And actually, I would like it to be 3 years long because it's like essentially content for 3 years. Ay, ay, ay. So Mr. Sero again criticized that analyst, that went over Kim Soo-hyun's KakaoTalks, and he called out the name. He said it's Kim Mi-young from True Bomb, and so that's the name of her and the agency that she has, and said that, look at the case studies that they advertise. It's about people getting out of being accused of SA. Also, this person likes to go out, make a lot of media appearances, but she was also proved for not being completely accurate. And he brought up the N-room case and said that she had analyzed the text of the telegram messages from the perpetrator of the N-room scandals. Essentially, go look it up. It's horrible. And she said that, this must be a middle-aged man in his 40s, but it actually turned out to be a guy in his 20s as the mastermind of this whole horrible scandal. So he's saying like, she got it wrong in that situation. So you can't really trust like her analysis of like speech patterns and whatnot. But in any event, we shouldn't even be looking at speech patterns here. We should just look at the raw core metadata of these KakaoTalks and just verify like what account is it linked to which phone number, which could then be verified as like, whose account is it and when were these messages sent. I mean, that's the kind of analysis I think we need, not like interpreting, well, I don't think Kim Soo-hyun would have used a heart emoticon in this situation, and he definitely wouldn't have used the just, LOL, like maybe he would have spelled it out, that kind of stuff. That's so unnecessary. So Mr. Garo Man is saying like, look, we got more videos, we got metadata, we have 5 of her smartphones, 4 of her laptops, and all of the screenshots. A lot of you have been also asking, saying like, who keeps these messages? Don't they just sort of like automatically get deleted and all that? Well, Mr. Kado said like, look, no, we actually have the original phones, we have the actual raw data, but more than that, Kim Soo-hyun screenshotted a lot of her messages. So it's even easier to bring out some of this evidence because she would be screenshotting messages, and even a really sad message where like she screenshotted like what she wanted to say to Kim Soo-hyun but then didn't, and this was a really sad thing where, well, Mr. Kado was saying like, when by the time that Kim Soo-hyun reached high school, it looked like things were cooling down and that she was already getting too old for him, because when he was in the military he would go get breaks and you're allowed to go and kind of resume your kind of normal life for like a weekend or something. And he was supposed to meet up with Kim Soo-hyun, but then he canceled on her the day of and actually ended up not even visiting her. And so she was pissed, but then she kind of wrote this thing where she was a little pissed, and then she ended up saying, I understand, and being accommodated to her. And it was really sketch, sort of like, where were you all night kind of a situation. And so that was really sad. That was in April of 2018. And the video that they released was in June of 2018 with Kim Soo-hyun eating at her house. So it seemed as if like he was trying to make up for ditching her and sort of ghosting her in April. And then he got all lovey-dovey. Remember that really kind of poetic letter while he's waxing poetic about the snow and the trees and, the stars and the sunrise and all that kind of stuff? That was written on June 9th. So then by June 20th, he's in Kim Soo-hyun's house eating something that she made after learning how to cook it in cooking school, 닭도리탕.
자, 어떠신가요?
아직 안 먹었어.
빨리 먹어요. 맛있어요?
네. 일단
네.
이
어이없어.
닭도리탕이랑 하면
네.
It was 11:20 p.m. according to the metadata, and she was officially a minor still, 17 years old, second year of high school. And so again, 2018, even though Kim Soo-hyun claims that they only dated from 2019 to 2020, so immediately this video does show that he's lying again. They still haven't, maybe they didn't have videos, maybe she didn't take any videos from 2015, but there was definitely all those pictures from like 2016. So most people, I think, would just be like, just show us the video from 2015, one and done, just get it over with. But then in this situation, it does still show that he is, if it's true, the metadata is true, that he's lying again, that, he's definitely at her house like this. And maybe they can claim that it wasn't a relationship, but at 11:20 p.m., who's at somebody's house like this on their limited time outside of the, the military break, and there was soju on the table, and 2 shot glasses, so it looks like, oh, he's, giving alcohol to a minor. And then they also released another video from the same night at 1 a.m. of Kim Soo-hyun singing at a karaoke machine that they have in their house, and he was singing to his own song, and at 1 a.m. So then again, it's more of like, if you weren't in a relationship, what is this? It's just the two of you like this. And yes, it is kind of cool to have Kim Soo-hyun in your place singing to his own song in a karaoke. I have been to one house party where 3 K-pop stars were singing to their own songs, like, one after another. It was like a huge party. I was like, this is so cool. Like, they're punching in their own songs into the karaoke machine, and wow, they're actually singing it. And it all sounded good too. It was like, it was not like auto-tune background vocal lip syncing, girls that, we got to get back to soon. And of course, how do you explain this creepy Paris video? So before this, Sero also made some splashes by releasing this video that Kim Soo-hyun reportedly made of when he was on a trip to Paris, and instead of like sending Kim Soo-hyun like a picture or a video of the Eiffel Tower, it was a lingerie store with a mannequin, and he's saying like, oh, I would, these kind of bodies aren't, none of the girls in Korea have this kind of a body like this mannequin. And apparently he sent it to Kim Soo-hyun, and that can be proved with the metadata too. Just very quickly, other people are coming out criticizing Kim Soo-hyun, especially the brother of Sulli. Sulli also decided to depart this world, and it came after a lot of this backlash against her for being in a movie with Kim Soo-hyun that was racy and very kind of creepy. I thought it was creepy. I was shocked by, like, when I saw that movie, I was just like, what is this movie? Why are they even doing this? And the brother is attacking Kim Soo-hyun, saying like, why did this have to happen that way? Where on set, there was supposed to be a body double that did that naked scene, and you guys insisted that it be her, and that she suffered a lot of backlash from this. He also, the brother, accused Kim Soo-hyun of attacking his mom and trying to shut his mouth by pressuring his mother. And then he also threw some shade over at Kim Soo-hyun about the press conference, saying like, look, well, how can you call that a press conference if you don't even take any questions? I can do better than that. Now, a quick update on Jin-ho, the YouTuber that is accused of being in the back pocket of Kim Soo-hyun. The family requested an injunction for him to stop making videos about Kim Soo-hyun, and they granted it, but Jin-ho said that, well, this is just a temporary thing. It's become a social issue, but this means that I can continue to broadcast the truth about Kim Soo-hyun. So it looks like he's just gonna, keep going, regardless of the injunction. But there has been some progress made in that situation in terms of the whole police and legal battle. Now Kim Soo-hyun is upping the police and legal battle with his suit against the family and Sero. So this fight is just getting started. It is going to intensify. However, for Kim Soo-hyun though, his entrance onto the stage, I think, was a bit lackluster and did not help his cause and actually probably hurt his side. I really went in wanting to be convinced, and I wanted to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have thought that about him or been so convinced by the family. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt more of like, wow, I still have to keep an open mind and try to be fair about this situation. But that did not convince me at all. It makes me now doubt you even more. Well, what do you guys think? Did that press conference change your mind or confirm in your mind that he is innocent, or make you feel like something was off about it? Definitely them tears were, because it was just like trying to be like squeezed out. It felt. And again, that's the opposite of acting 201. So let everyone know what you think. Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.